Welcome back. We are still in day 2. We are doing some harder problems with the equation of a circle. In this particular situation, we are given the ends of a diameter. We have 2 points. We have an 18, -13, and a 4, -3. So let's take a minute, and this is not in your notes, but I'm just going to pull up a blank slide. I want to envision together, here's our circle. They have given us the ends or the end points of a diameter. And if you remember, that diameter goes exactly through the center of a circle, right? So we can use these endpoints. Like here's one endpoint, and then over here is the other endpoint. We can use those endpoints to help us find the center. So if we think about this for a minute, if the center is exactly the center of the circle, in the middle of the circle, when we're thinking about the diameter, how might we figure out the center point? And we did this back before Christmas. We talked about a special point that is in the middle. And maybe you're thinking of it and maybe you can't. But the center point is the midpoint of the diameter. And I don't know if you remember, but remember Desmos can do midpoint for us. So back to our problem. If we have the point 18, -13, well, maybe here, we'll call that 18, -13. That's that endpoint. And then we have 4, -3. That's that end point of the diameter. If we could find the midpoint of those 2 points, halfway in between, we would know the center. So basically, step 1 is saying that. So remember, you can go into Desmos, type in the word midpoint and the 2 points. And I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. Even though it's there in your notes, I do want to show it to you. So you're going to type midpoint, the actual word, point, the first, doesn't matter what order you put them in, comma between, second point. And I don't really see the midpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize my keyboard and I'm going to click on the label button, and I still don't see the midpoint. The midpoint is going to be a black dot because we're using black here. We could always make it a different color, but let's try zooming out. Looking for our black dot. Oh, there it is. So the midpoint is 11, -8. And if you look at your notes, I have screen captured that for us, 11, -8. This is our center. So back to our little sloppy visual diagram here. This point right here is our H and our K. Okay, so that is excellent. The Desmos calculator did that for us, and I'm going to label that HK. Not too bad. So now what do we do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write, actually that's still in step 1, we're going to write the equation of the circle with that center. So x minus h squared. This feels kind of familiar. Didn't we just do this a few minutes ago? We don't know r, but we'll get there. So my h is 11, so x minus 11. My y my k term, excuse me, the one that goes in with the y, is -8. So it's going to be y minus -8, but the two minus signs become a plus. There we go. So I feel like we've done this recently where we didn't have the r, but we had the center. So now step 2 says use one, either one, and I'm going to highlight that. Use either one of the endpoints. And we're going to treat that as our x and our y. It doesn't matter which one you pick. And why is that? Well, if you look at our picture, I'm going to make, if I used 18, -13, that's going to give me a radius in red. If I used 4, -3, that's going to give me the same length radius, but it's marked there in my picture with the blue. So regardless of which point we use, the 18, -13, or the 4, -3, it's going to work as long as we do our calculations correctly. So I'm going to pick the first one, 18 to be my x, and my -13 to be my y. And I'm going to substitute that in for x and for y. And that's all equal to r squared. So what I'm going to do in order to do this calculation, I mean, some of you can do it and square it and add it together, and that's no problem. But a lot of times people make mistakes when they square a negative number. So I'm just going to use my Desmos calculator. Let me find the squared button, plus, and then that'll be -13. And let me just make sure I'm typing this in right. Plus 8 squared, remember to square it. Let me make sure I did that. 18 minus 11, -13 plus 8. And we get 74. That is our r squared. Okay, not so bad. So now we can x minus 11 squared plus y plus 8 squared equals 74. Now the problem, kind of a small problem that we're going to have graphing this, is that 74 is not a perfect square. So, you know, it's really easy to put 11, -8 on the graph, right over here, go over 11 and down 8. But we don't know what the square root, remember r, let me write this a little neater for you. Remember that 74 is r squared. So r is the square root of 74. And when we go over to the Desmos calculator, we're going to find out that that's a decimal. It's 8.6. So it's really hard to graph that. I mean, we can try. We would have to go up 8.6. Going to be a little tough, though, to do that. We would have to go up a little bit more than, and it's going to be bigger than what we can fit onto my screen anyway. But I just wanted you to get a feel for what this other type looks like. So when we come back in just a moment, we are going to be practicing a couple more together. Let me just skip back to where I was. Just want to make sure I know where we are. Nope, that's too far. That's day 3. So what we'll be doing too is practicing some other problems that are multiple choice. And then we will be switching over into ALEKS. ALEKS is going to let us practice some of these harder types. I will say though, please, 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 please make sure that you keep your notes handy.